Okay, Bismillah. Yesterday what we did something like this, which is doing some kind of reading from the keyboard and then putting them in some sort of a loop in order to be able to ask the user to give us a correct day or month and year based on whatever was required for us to do in terms of, I mean, we wanted to have these conditions that the year should be between 1000 and 3000. These are the up to these days. Well, normally we should be looking at the depending on the month and the year if it is leap or not. That's not the purpose of this exercise. I'm not going to be going into trying to know is this month has to be 28 as a maximum or 29 or is it 30 or 31. I don't care about that because this is just if and else and something like that, which is not what I would like to spend time on. What I'd like to spend time on is to talk about the exceptions and exception handling and having our own exceptions, like these day exceptions, what we haven't used yet. We haven't used those days exceptions, month exception. We did not do anything except that we put the exceptions here. So now, as you can see, all the verification that we're doing, actually we're doing it outside of the class. See, this is our class date converter that takes these days and month and year and then converts it. But the verification of all the valid inputs is done outside of this class, which means it's not us who are going to be providing this class to different programmers to use it to do the verification. We just assume that they have to do the verification on their own. Now what we'd like to do is actually to incorporate the verification inside the class instead of having it outside of the class like here. So the first part we were trying just to solve the problem, just to be able to do something quite quickly and easily. Now we'd like to be able to do something better, and this is going to be better to have all the verification in the class. So the user of our class date converter, he only has to put the data and then it will just manage if there's a problem. It will tell him there's a problem and it doesn't have to write the code to make sure that, like what we did, that this something is respecting the rules and things like that. Plus what we wanted to do as well is that we wanted to have 3 exception classes, so one for each type of error or exception. One, the day wrong exception, or the month exception if there's something exception, something that is not okay. We would like to have just its own exception class for that. So this is what the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to create these day, month and year exceptions, and then I'm going to put all the verification inside the class and see how I can do that, or where should I put the verification to do that. So first of all, what we're going to be doing, let's just leave this here. I'm just going to go for this, and then this is my class. I'm going to on the same package, I'm just going to create a class. It's going to be like the day exception. Yes, just I can do it. No, not in the main. As an inner class here, because we'd like to have the exception inside this class, so we can do it as an inner class inner classes here. That's another option, but well, it depends. For example, if this day exception is inside of the class, then you have to use, if you would like to access it, you have to go through the class itself, which means you put some kind of a restriction. I don't want people to use this exception directly. I want them to use it through my class date converter. If this is what you want, then you do it inside as inside of the class. I'm assuming as if you can do that as an inner class and make it public, because if you make it private, nobody can access it outside of this class. Only these classes are only private to, will be only private to this date converter if I put them here inside and make them private. If I'm not making them private, making them public, what I'm saying is that if you'd like to instantiate a new day exception, you can do that directly. You have to go through the date converter. So if you remember, there's this new dot something new and etc. So you have to go through the date converter. and then on the other hand, if you put it outside, then it makes like it's separate from the class. It can be used by somebody else as well and with our same classes. So it's different advantages, disadvantages. So because last time we did it inside of the class, I just wanted to do something different, so we don't do always inner classes. So you don't have to think that all exception handling classes have to be inner classes. Well, they don't have to. They can be in any class. And I'm going to make them extend exception. Okay, I have this day exception, copy and paste, and I'm going to be having month exception based on this. And this is the beauty of this refactor, because it's going to just rename it based on the file and also the name of the class, of course, because the name of the file has to be the same as the name of the class. And now doing the same again, Control V, and it's year exception, capital Y, and refactor. So now I have my 3 year exception, month exception, and day exception. Okay, later on we did not put anything inside of them. I'm going to later on put something just to show you that it's not that, it doesn't have to be like just empty classes, because it doesn't make sense to just have empty classes. If you have empty class, well, just use the exception and that's it. You don't have to generate this day exception. If you generate this kind of day exception, either you probably want to separate the kind of exception that might happen, or because you would like to be able to do something based on when the day is wrong or the year is wrong and something like that. To be able to identify uniquely different types of exceptions. And we're going to be doing something similar, inshallah. Okay, so now I'm just going to comment these because I don't want to leave them, so we can go back to them when we want. So I'm just commenting all this. I'm just leaving maybe the scanner, because I might just ask the user to give me the numbers, and then these numbers I'm going to send them to the class. Once I send them to the class should do the verification and the exception handling inside of the class. So if I'd like just now to do the same things here, I need to go inside of the class and I put the verifications here. So before saving this, I would like to do some verification. So what kind of verification can I do? Let's start simple, just a simple if for now. Imagine that those who give us the day, so this day, I mean this is the parameter day, if the day is less than 1 or the day is greater than 31, so this is a problem for us. We are not going to accept this kind of values. So how about throw in a new day exception? Now it tells me there's a problem. What's the kind of problem? Unreported exception, day exception, must be caught or declared to be thrown. Which means you have two options. Either you add throws to this constructor. So this is a constructor is a method, so it can have also the different things that the method has. In this case, it can also have the throws. Or it tells me two things. Either you surround the statement with try catch, or you make this throw an exception. If I click on this one, this is just what is added. This becomes, this throws an exception. If I don't want to do that, the other option is just, well, just put this inside of a try catch. Well, I don't want to catch the exception here. I want those who are going to be using this method to know that maybe there might be an exception, and that exception is the exception, so you can know that this was an exception of the day. Basically, if there was something, an exception regarding the day, this is going to be generated. Alaikum salam. So if I'm not inside this if, that means the day is just respecting the conditions. It's between it's between 1 and 31, then I'm going to take the value and then put it inside of the class. And I'm going to do the same thing this time for the month. If month less than 1 or the month is greater than 12, I'm going to throw new month exception. Again, same thing, two options, either try catch or add this month exception. It is not part of the type of exceptions that this method is throwing, so I can just add the throws as well. So now this method, this constructor can throw the exception and can throw also a month exception. And you get the point. I can do something like this as well for the year. If the year is less than 1000 or greater than 3000, we're going to consider it to be a new problem. So throw new year exception. And we added. Sorry?
The year, I think it's more 1000 and then
3000. Yeah, well, when the year is greater than 1000 and less than 3000, is this a problem, or this is what we want? So this is what we want. Then here I'm just saying this is a problem. So if this is true, means this is a problem. So when this should be a problem, it's a problem when the year is less than 1000, which is not greater than 1000, and the year is greater than 3000. So if it's less than 1000 or greater than 3000, this is a problem. So now this is what I'm catching. I'm catching the problem. I'm making the condition to be able to get the problem to throw an exception. If we have a problem, let's throw an exception. So that's why I'm not putting the greater than or equal to 1000, because if they are valid, we don't want to create any exceptions for that. This is okay. When the year is not valid, then we need to throw the exception. So that's why even the day, I'm saying if the day is less than 1, we have to throw an exception. This is not okay. If the day is greater than 31, well, we have to throw an exception. And so that's why. So now what we did, we just did something regarding to this date converter, which now is and I think we get our answer why. You see here, now that I put the date converter that throws something, did you realize that now when I'm outside of the class, so see, when I was inside of the class, if, for example, let me just show you another example. Look at this here, public date converter. I just would like to show you, no, I think I understand why we have you know what this is doing, right?
Yes, it's calling the other constructor.
So this constructor with no arguments is calling the other constructor that has 3 numbers, 3 ints, and this is the day, this is the month, this is the year. So this is normally valid, but there's one problem. What's the problem? This constructor generates an exception. Either we catch it, or we add throws of all these things as well. So you see, or I can do some try catch, but the problem, you cannot do try catch because you're in the constructor. This is a special case because the constructor should be the first statement, so it should not be a try catch before. Okay, sorry, I think I should not be like this. Exception, or is it possible? Is it acceptable? Let me try that. No, it's impossible. The try catch is considered to be acceptable. But it does the only exception that, I mean, this is the I don't know. And to verify, but it seems like this try catch is the only time, the only kind of statement that you can write before this, because if you remember, I cannot put anything before the call of the constructor should be the first thing to be done. Or is it? No, this is about the, I'm confusing the super. Maybe it's about the super. Let's say int d equal 5. Is it okay to have this? Yes. So I'm confusing with the super. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's focus now on the problem. My problem here is just this thing here, because I'm using the methods within the same class, and it has these throws. So if I'd like to use it, it will tell me, well, look, because you decided that this throws some exceptions, you have either to catch them or this has to throw as well. So either you put these throws, all of them, so all these should be thrown as well, or then it's okay. Or if you'd like to have something else, then this should be, if you don't want that this method throws something, then you catch the exception yourself, and then you do something with it. So I can just catch the exception, catch, and then I can put, either I can put one exception for all of them, and if I'm putting the exception for all of them, which means I can just do this. Okay, there's a problem. A problem happened. Now I don't know was it for the day or the month, or I don't know. If I would like to know, well, then I will catch specific exceptions, like the day exception. If I catch the day exception, a problem happened with the day. Or maybe I can say just the day was invalid. Is invalid. And now if there's still a mistake, because this can throw different types of exceptions. This type of exception, this is one of them, and another one is the month exception. Now the month is invalid, and the last one is the year exception. Now if I put the year exception, as soon as I type year, this is going to disappear, hopefully, but it is not, and I don't know why it is not. Well, first of all, this is day, month, and year. I was expecting that the try catch is going to be okay. That's something that is not what I was expecting. I was expecting just to put these different exceptions. These are the different exceptions the constructor is going to raise. We have these three exceptions, possible three exceptions, and if I catch them all, I was expecting that it's not going to be asking me that. Oh, you see, that's the kind of message I was trying to look for. Call to this must be the first statement in constructor. So I was that's what I knew, but it's confused me that this is not the first statement in the constructor, because there was an other error was hiding this error as well. So now this is not about this is not about the fact that this need to be caught. So they're caught now, but they're not acceptable because this should be the call should be the first in the constructor. That's what I knew, but this made me change my conviction. So now, because this has to be the first statement, I cannot have the try catch in the constructor. So I have just to have these throws. If I have the throws, now it's not a problem anymore. If the last one is added, now this is okay. So when you are in the same class, now this is, I'm trying to answer the question that was asked before. You remember this find hidden number? We said that because if a method throws something, and you see this parse int, if you go inside the integer class, this is throwing some exception, and because this throws an exception, normally it should force me to either put it under and surrounded by a try catch, or make this throw something. But this is not the case here. It's not telling us you have to surround it with a try catch or make the method check number throw the exception. Why? It's the same thing that we just had. When it was on the same, when you are in the same class and you try to use a method that you define that throws something, then you have to catch it, because you are the one who is defining the class. So you need to define the class without leaving some mistakes inside the class. But here we are using the class. We are using this integer and we're using this method. So we have to make sure that when this method is throwing something, we need to make sure that we catch it. It's not going to force us to throw an exception. It's your job to catch it. If you don't catch it, well, that's your class who is not going to be working properly when the exception happens. So I think that's the reason behind that, why we don't have any warning here when we try to use a method that throws something, because this method is not from our class, on the same class, so that's why actually we have these kind of problems. And that's why here we have, because we're using these throws, and if we use a method that throws something, we have to either use throw or try catch, or surround it with try catch. So that's the parenthesis that I just would like to close. Is it okay with you, or am I just confusing you more a little bit? So the summary: when you define a method with throws and you use that method yourself in that class that you just defined, you have to use the try catch or make the method throw something, throw the exceptions as well. If you don't, like what happens if you're just using, then you have to manage it yourself. Yes. Here the throw is inside of a condition. No, I was not talking about this throws. I was talking about a method that has throws. If it's inside your own classes, you're the definer of the class. I think this is something that is related to you. You are doing the work of defining the class, and this in defining this class, you decided this method should throw some exception. If you'd like to use this method, well, either you have to manage the exception, either by making the method who is calling this method here to be throwing the exceptions as well, or the call to this method should be between the try catch. That's what I was trying to do here. So here, if I'd like to use this method here, the date converter, I have two options. I mean, in this case I have only one option, because this is a constructor. I cannot use this as the second statement in the line. It has to be the first line, the first statement in this method. So the other option, because I cannot put try before this, I have to just throw this method here, because it's using another method that throws an exception. Now I have either to use the try catch or the throws, and in this special case, because of the constructor, it has to be only the throws. Yes. So what happened now if, and this is, let's have a look here. Let's go back here. Now what we're doing, let's just remove this thing, because we can always go back to it if we need to. Now look at this thing here. When I'm trying to use this, now the date converter is this one. This one throws exceptions. It tells me now that you're using unreported exceptions. So again, two options. Either I make the main throw exceptions, which basically this is something, or surround this statement with a try catch, or surround the whole block with try catch. These two are just, this one surround this, just the statement, and notice that if I do this, it just gives me the different type of exception that can be thrown, and it just gives me some kind of things, so I can do whatever I want inside of each one of them. And the other one is that not only this try catch, but the whole block, the whole thing is going to be inside of a try catch. So this whole statements, those statements are going to be inside the try catch. What do I want? Only this one inside the try catch, inside the try, or the whole block? So that's the kind of options, these two options. But all of them just end up being like two things. Either I use the throws here, or I use the try catch. So now what I'd like to do, if I use the throws, means this is going to raise exceptions. For example, let's just use the throws. It's going to add the throws here, and let's just add them all. No. So what would happen now is that if I just run this program, what is going to be? Well, basically, because I said that this is going to throw an exception, I didn't catch it, so I'll just throw in it. And this is the main, so nobody is going to catch it after the main. So this gives me this kind of exception. Why? Because I put 0. 0, when I put 0 here, is 0 less than 1? Yes. So I get here, and then I have this day exception. Now if I just change that and make it not 0, for example, make it 1, now the other problem is going to be the new exception that's going to be raised is going to be the month exception, because the day exception was okay. So the month was 1. Is 1 less than 1? No. Is 1 less than greater than 31? No. So I'm not going to get inside here. So I'm going to put this 1 inside the day of this class. Then I get back here. This is 0. 0 less than 1? Yes. So I get inside and I throw the month exception. That's what I'm having here. Sorry? Also on the year, of course, because it did not reach the year. If I put the month correctly, then again same problem will happen for the year, because the year does not respect the conditions. You see, now this is the year. So only this is, it shows me that it's working, right? But I need just to catch those exceptions, for example. How can I catch the example? Yes.
So as soon as it catches an exception, it stops the process?
Exactly. When the exception is called, I'm not going to keep going, because this is like a return. It just stops the program. I mean, it stops the execution up till this line. And then if there's no catch, then there's no try catch, then it's going just to stop the whole program. So now what I would like to do is just, I would like to get something from the user, okay? So this month here, I'm just going to get it here. Let's just put this, for example, to be 0. And I'm going to keep this, the things that I just did. Remember these verifications are this do while that I had. So, no, not this equal, double equal. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to read the day, kb.nextInt, but here you can see this might be a problem here, because somebody might enter not a number but a letter. What happens then? Well, I just would like to do some kind of a try catch. When this is given some kind of a problem, what I would like to do, I would just like to flush whatever was next line, and then maybe display some error message. So please enter the day, and let's just put it on the same line. And then if the day is wrong, I'm going to just display error. And if I put it error, I'm going to make the day is equal just, I don't know, to 0, whatever. I don't need to do that because it stays 0. It was not assigned, but let's just leave it like this. So now, as long as this day is equal to 0, what is going to happen? I'm going to have a loop, which means now if I try to put this, okay, they cancel. I still have some mistakes here because I need to try catch. Let's put these, surround this with the try catch, and let's just remove this and put some kind of day exception. I'm going just to display some small message, just to put something inside of that. So this is month exception, this is year exception. So you can. So what I'm doing, I'm just trying to catch here. If I catch an exception, I'm just going to display the kind of exception I caught. Now it's not going to normally show this error message. It doesn't. It's just not here. It still shows an error. I don't know why. Where is it? Let's go back here. The variable might not have been initialized. Okay, let's just, because this, let's put it inside of the try catch. Now if there's any problem, try to do this. If there's any problem, just display the kind of exceptions here. Well, I don't have to put all these lines. They're going just to be disturbing us, so we can see everything. So I'm going to try, and this is what's inside of the try. Try to do this. If there's a problem, just catch the type of exception and display something based on that exception, so we can know which kind of exception was caught. Now if I run this, please enter the day. If I put something that doesn't make sense, it will display error, and please enter the day. If I put something like this thing, this is not a valid day. Now it's going to go and run, but here this was generating an exception, and it's just showed me the day exception here. So this shows that actually you can read something, and then if something is not valid, it's going to keep asking me until I enter something that is just, at least it's a number. And then after the number is given, I'm leaving the date converter to check if the number is valid or not valid. And depending on if it's valid or not valid, it's going to just return the kind of exception. If it's not valid, and what type of exception is it a day exception, a month exception, or a year exception? Do you see where I'm going? No? Sorry? A little bit. So what would be the next step if we would like to do the same thing for the month? Copy and paste. But it should be a better way. There should be a better way to do this. Instead of always having to do something like this, I can do it actually much better instead of this copy and paste. But I'm not going to do it complicated. So let's maybe for another time. I don't want to add more. So this is read the day. I'm going to read the month, and this is, please enter the month. This is the month, and if there's a problem, just the error and then read again, and do the same thing this time for the year. Please enter the year, and then year, and if the year is 0, why 0? Why am I checking if this is 0? Because I have initialized them with 0. If I had put another value, then I'm going to test about this value, because I know it's 0 at the beginning. I put 0 in this day, month, and year. That's why I'm checking here to verify if the day is still 0, because if I'm trying to enter something that is not a number here, after trying to read an int, this day is not going to be initialized. So the exception is going to prevent something to be put inside of the day, this variable. So the variable was not changed. It was 0 and it stayed 0. And when there was an exception, I just flushed what was in the memory of the scanner, and then displayed an error, and then went back, because this is still equal to 0, and just go back to be able to get another number. So even in this here, if I put 0, what should I get? It will show me error. Exactly. Try again. So you show me the error as if, but there was no exception, because I'm not seeing the error message. You see, the error message is only displayed if this is not valid. So this was valid. This is 0, it was 0, so it went inside, but 0 is not acceptable. It just came back here and told me, well, please enter the day, because the day is not valid. If you don't want to have this 0, you would like to put some kind of special value that the user is not going to type, well, you can use, for example, -1, because generally the user is not going to be putting -1 as the day or the month, while maybe he might slip and make 0 for whatever reason. I don't know. But anyway, this is just a small talk. If I want it to be -1, for example, here, I just need to check it to make it -1. So now the 0 is going to be an acceptable value, not going to ask us to give it again. But if you put -1, well, it will ask him to give me another number. So you have to decide which number is, take one of the numbers. So because we started with 0, let's just keep it 0. Okay, so now I'm reading, and let's just put put them all in one place. And then while I'm trying to initialize, if there's anything, I'm just going to catch the exceptions. What I can do, just to show you actually some more interesting classes. Is to have some kind of a message. If I'd like to, you see this exception, every exception I can just do something like this, for example. Except dot get message. This get message is going to give me the message of the exception, so I can just do something like this. So just to show you. Just to show you what kind of the result this get message is going to give me. Imagine I type, for example, this is for the day, and this is for the month, and this is for the year. I get null. Why is it null? So basically, actually, one of them is give me null, and the one that is going to be giving me this null is this get message. Why? Because when you have these kind of exceptions, this day exception, you're inheriting from exception, and this class exception, you can just, if you'd like to extend it, there's one of the messages that need to be set. If you'd like to set the message, and let me show you what I would like to have you look at. Public day exception. So I'm going to put this one that doesn't return anything, and no, it should be a body. It should have a body. Well, I don't need to put a super, but this is what is going to happen basically if I'm just calling this one. Now I just would like to show you there's a lot of constructor that I can be able to call the super constructor of this, which to call super and then message, because this exception, it has a constructor that takes an argument as a text, and this text that you give it to it is going to put it in the message, so you can get the message from here. So what I'm going to do now in this day exception, I just would like not to, okay, what I can do, I just don't need this one. I'm just going to keep only this one. Now I just added a constructor that only takes one argument, which means now I have a problem in my class. Why? Because this is calling a constructor that takes no argument. But I don't have a constructor that takes no argument in the day exception. I have one that takes a string. So what is this type of string? Let me just show you. The day is wrong. So now this kind of text is going to be sent to the day exception as a message. This message is going to be sent to the superclass, which is exception, with setting this message text to be this one. The result is that when I'm calling, what am I? That converter. Okay, what I'm calling here, program. When I'm calling this get message, now this get message of this the exception, it's going to give me the message of that exception as it was sent. So if I'm entering some weird numbers, You see, now I get the day is wrong. So this get message here, I'm just putting some custom things that allow me to at least just be able to send a message. When there's an exception, I'm just saying this is the kind of message that goes with that exception. And the message that I'm sending, it can be caught when I'm getting this, using this get message. So I can do the same for the month and for the year, which is basically just copy and paste, of course with a small modification. So now if I do something like this, I'm able to, let me copy, and then for the year I'm copying again. So now all my exceptions, my custom-made exceptions, are going to be needing some text before they can be called. So now I can just say the day is wrong, or the month is invalid, and maybe here like I'm saying the year is not okay, just to, I don't know, just to have different messages for whatever. Now if I run this, and if the day is okay and then the month is not fine, I'm going to have the month is invalid, and so on. If I have the year now this time, the year is not okay. So that's this is some kind of things that we can have with the month and day and month and exceptions. I can have also other things if I want to, which means I can have some kind of methods of my own if I'd like to do something or do some kind of processing. I can just put them in the class itself whenever there's a an exception. Yes.
When I get error in day and month and in day,
Yes.
can I see the 3 messages one time?
At the one time, no. Not with this kind of implementation. Because with this kind of implementation, we just every time there's just one problem, it just stops and throw the exception. If you want that to happen, then I need to change my code, but this will add some more complication. So now, to summarize what we just did, we have different kind of exceptions that we're catching here. We're catching like any kind of exception that when some user gives us not a number when we are expecting him to give us a number. So when the user doesn't give us a number, we're going just to make him repeat until the number is given. Now the number, if it's valid or not valid, is not verified here. You will want it to make it verified inside this class converter. And then what we do is we try and catch and try to see if everything is okay. Now if we never try to put like a valid date, like some, let's say 3 and then 2017. Now if I do something like this, now this is going to display a correct date. If one of them is wrong, even just the day is wrong and everything is okay, it's going to determine the day is wrong and not going to display anything. So this calculated verification is done through exceptions, because every time what I'm doing, if you give me the day and month and year, which is these are the values that are given from the user, and after they've been checked that they're valid, I call the constructor, and this constructor is going to throw some exceptions, because if the days are not respecting these conditions, then it's going to throw the exception. And this day exception is just a class that extends the exception, and I just added a constructor that just takes a message. This message is sent to the superclass, because if we do this, we can be able to, when there's an exception, to be able to use this get message to get the message of the exception. I can be more specific if you want, just to let me show you, for example, some kind of good use of this message. So why do I really need to have this message? For example, you can do something like this. If the day is less than 1, you're going to be sending the day is less than 1. And then if well, I can put else if, it doesn't matter. Else if, now if the day it was the day is greater than 31, I'm going to say it's going to throw another day exception, but this time I'm going to say the day is more than or greater than.
So it's called the super, right?
It's calling the superclass of this, which sends the message, which sets the message, and then now I can be more specific in the type of message that I'm displaying. So if I'm just now doing something like please enter the day, I type minus 213. Well, this is a valid number, a valid int, so it's going to be accepted. So now whatever. So now the day, it's going to tell me the day is less than 1, which gives me actually more information. So you can be more specific if you want to. So this is the advantage of having this constructor that is giving you the message. So you can just not send only one message, you can send different type of messages based on different types of errors that can happen. And we do this we can do this for each of one of these classes. So the point is just to understand it for one, it's the same thing for other classes. And then the idea is also that we took the verification and from in the main to inside here to be able to make sure that we get the values that are respecting whatever is needed to be respected, these type of conditions. And this gives us, summarizes a little bit of different types of exception handling things. You have the try catch, you can catch multiple exceptions by doing some kind of these things, if these kind of things, and there's also some other parts, which is the last thing I would like to talk about, is something that is the try catch doesn't end up with just only being try catch. There's another thing. There's try catch and then finally. And this finally basically is just in some cases when generally you try to do these try catches, because these try catches most of the time, if you'd like to deal with them most of the time, it's going to be because you deal with some file input output. You try to read something from a file, or maybe you read something from a database. So you open a connection, then you get some information, some data, and then or maybe you get from the network, you just get some file from the network. But what happens if there's a network connection interruption, or the data you're trying to fetch, it doesn't exist? So these are kind of exceptions, so you can try to catch them. And in the finally, why? Because in any case, if you finish the try, everything, no problems, you go to the finally. If there was a problem, you went to the catch, you do whatever is in the catch, and then you reach the final. Finally is like some place that is, just to say, just some organizational piece of block of code. Every time that you do something, you try to do something, if it's okay, then you have to finally do some closing. Normally this finally is kept for, you try to open a connection, if everything is fine, you do the work, and then when you're done, finally here is going to be containing the code that, okay, close the connection. You open a connection, do the processing in the try. If everything is okay, then you don't go to the catch. Then after that, the last thing you're going to do is go to the finally. But what if there's a problem? You open the connection, you try to do something, and then there was a problem with that connection, or the text that, or the data that you wanted to receive is not enough, or something is, there was a problem, there was an exception. So you go to the catch. When you finish the catch, what do? Do you jump out of the finally? No, you go to the finally in it anyways. So if you are executing try, you go to the finally. If you're executing the catch, you go to the finally. So this is something that says in the finally you put the code that if you have opened the file in the try, then you close it in the finally. If there was a problem, well, you catch the problem, and then anyways you have to close the file anyways. So the finally, either it was a problem or not a problem, is going to be executed all the time. So it's more about an organization. You can even not use it, it's still okay, it's going to do the work, because after everything is finished, you can put the closing the connection here, for example, somewhere here. But when you put it inside of a finally, you just make it like a coherent block. I'm opening, and in the finally I'm closing. So this is the kind of thing. So if you see a finally, this is what it means. This is just a piece of code that is going to be executed. Either the try was executed successfully, without exceptions. Or if there was an exception, you went to the catch and everything was executed inside the catch, and then at the end it goes to the finally either ways. Any questions?